Welcome back. Here we are looking at this orange. Okay. We've got ourselves a top of Kaowi here that goes through pretty straight into a bend into Nihao and Keaula. I didn't mark it because I use this huge. I don't have a smaller one. It seems hard to write entire island names here, but I could draw lines. So there's that. So there's that segment, this segment here. Which then is connecting to this smaller portion of this, like, pair of glasses or something. Eyeballs. I was thinking it's kind of like, I don't know if I drew this exactly right. Although maybe Mauna Kea is like the South Pole. I keep amending what's what in my mind of this particle of the Hawaiian sphere. If it was the case, I mean, it's the only way to know if it was the case is to actually look. That's all I'm saying. So I managed to put that shape, the top shape, plus the other shape around it here. And then, like, down here, I mean, I didn't draw it, like, perfect, I'm sure. So there's a point here, which is the center point. And then there's basically, wait a minute. Did I fuck up? Oh, no, no, no. I was about to say, I was like, wait, does 5 go to, like, here? Did I make 15 not make sense? But I'm realizing, that's right, 5 went to here, 6 went to here. That's right, I tried to draw 5 as kind of like here-ish. With like 3, 4 here. 1, 2 up here. Or, wait, sorry. There. And then, 8, 7, and then we come back to basically 15, where they all conjoin at a single point, which is where they probably broke apart. Like, it probably broke here, and then the energy propagated this way, just straight this way. Possibly in both directions, which then took this off. And maybe in all 4 directions, like above and below. So it's going this way, and below, but maybe above was actually a shorter distance. So the top segment fell off first, and then the bottom segment actually didn't even break completely. This actually would suggest that the energy propagated in all 4 directions from here, basically. And I was thinking about it. I mean, this orange is maybe a little. It's too solid. Like the peel is too thick. Like it wouldn't fold well. And I probably didn't do it. I tried to make the bottom more like to size with the middle chunks. They seem about like the middle one might be a little overall bigger even. So I don't think I did that. So there's also that effect where I pretty much made the this island on my orange half of the orange. So it's like if I took the peel off, like this segment would basically it would lie well. It wouldn't have a lot of like material underneath it, causing it to like be filled or have space to fill. It wouldn't have space to fill as well as perhaps something that was more of this nature, whereas like an entire like cup that was an upside down cup pretty much that is then containing more material than the rest, so it's more volcanic than the others in that kind of way. So because I was watching some videos earlier on the hotspot. I'm trying to find information on the hotspot. Maybe I can take a few seconds to look into it because I think it's legitimately that we know there's like a lot of magma there, but then we infer that it's from a hotspot. Like this image, a diagram showing, and the inferred underlying mantle plume. It's the mantle plume that is. That's the thing. That's like the. So really, it could be that there's just a cup like this that's like a ball, like a sphere rolled through the Pacific, and then like it started attaching at a point there, like it attached and then it slid away, and then the North Pole fully severed kind of thing. Does that make sense afterwards? Because then it would pretty much be going this way, probably. Literally thinking it through. Let's look. Because it was here. It almost has to go from there to quickly. I was thinking, like, as it loses the crust, like, as this chunk falls away, like, maybe it rolls to the side and strips away, like, here then, to then take off that segment, and then it's just basically the top slides in at the end. And then, like, the track itself is probably just not visible in the molten magma. That, I don't know if that makes sense. Like the track is it wasn't like it. That makes sense. It wasn't the particle was so large. It wasn't physically just like touching the earth. Like it had almost like stilts, like little porcupine needles that like stuck into the earth, that into the mantle, into the oceanic crust, which was probably still like not at a equilibrium temperature as it is today, generally speaking. Like it was probably still relatively molten and cooling, and like able to be sticky to some type of particle. So like the bond from both sides was happening, so it bonded as it rolled and detached just segments of like the stilts it was on. So maybe it didn't even roll like in the most perfect manner, although it does seem like it rolled in a pretty straight line. It's because it's the hypothesis I'm considering here. If this is happening, which it's very odd that Hawaii, I shouldn't be able to put on a sphere. These islands I just put on a sphere using their seamounts as a basis. Pretty much just cut here, and then cut here basically around this one. This one I kind of did like over here, I believe. Like it's definitely like a guessing game. Like, well, like was this, if this is happening, was this like part of it, or did this kind of like come out afterwards? Although it looks kind of bubbly, very bubbly, like it came out afterwards. Whereas over here it looks way more like sheer cliff face that just broke apart kind of thing. So maybe that's a reliable way. Like this is polygonal shapes. These are more bubbly. Like there was a venting going on from underneath because it was basically a particle like the Earth but on a smaller scale that had mantle, meaning it had mantle in it, basically. A particle with mantle material contained in it that's rolling. And I believe the particle, I've been thinking about it, the most likely place for the particle to have been was actually under Australia because of the ammonite there. Here. So Australia basically moved. It was physically attached. This portion of Papua New Guinea down to here, maybe here exactly. I'm not sure exactly where down here. It's more clear here, and I've talked about it enough. I don't want to get caught up on like proving what I'm saying in this moment. But essentially, Australia was here to here, and then Papua New Guinea was this segment. But then Australia, because the Earth was smaller, before the Earth expanded, Australia like also continued over here, and I believe like up to here pretty much, and filled between here until Antarctica was somewhere over this region, but without oceans. And also below it, like down from this point, from this one down to the next one was Antarctica down here, where these bonds are breaking. What was I talking about? What was I talking about? I was talking about the Hawaii. I lost track. I got caught in my head. Oh yeah, and basically trying to explain, like, there isn't really a mantle plume, I believe, that's like known. That's why it's got a question mark and it says inferred. So what I'm getting at is there was no mantle plume, and this particle rolled, and as it rolled, it like attached, and components of it like were left behind on the surface, which then created these seamounts, and that was basically like detaching an outer ring. So like this is the Hawaii is the, even though I draw it on the outside because that's the only way I can, it's actually the inner surface, so it's like down into, but at the same shape. So it's still the same, it's just the inner surface of the sphere. And so the outer surface is being deposited as it rolls through the Pacific. I know how ridiculous it sounds. I know. I'm aware. You don't need to be scoffing continuously, okay? Okay, okay, okay. So basically, I had an inner shell of the Hawaiian Islands, like at the surface, and then a mantle, which is what's like captured with like underneath the island's like crust, under the weight of it, like held within a polygonal boundary of like a container like this, just not as like as good as the bottom half of the sphere, pretty much. That's storing magma. So like these ones stored magma too, but just not as much. But they were also shaped by the over, mostly the what we see is not like the after effects, I believe, but it's more so the like while it was a sphere. And then once it like broke down into different components, it left behind like a chamber of a large quantity of the magma. So while it's traveling this way, it then reaches here. I wonder if it like abruptly went this way. If it doesn't really make sense. This is probably more related to this feature. It's just they're right next to each other. And I don't want to disconnect them, but I don't want to think about it too much right now because it pretty much goes back to these currents. So like the mantle was punctured by a vortex weapon used off the coast of India, which was not the coast of India at the time because the earth had yet to expand. And then mantle flowed out in all directions. And it began to sweep in all directions until it collided in places, especially colliding under Australia, where it produced from 3 angles, I think. From basically from one route going southward, down from India, along the western boundary of India, but also because it was still attached over here along the eastern boundary of Africa, into Antarctica, through it into Australia, and then colliding with a current coming from underneath North America, and colliding also with a current coming from across eastward from the mantle puncture hole that then went out to this region ultimately at some point once it started to shape the oceanic floor into like more being by the amount of currents that were flowing and carving openings in between the continental shelf, making a continental shelf out of a single landmass, basically, relatively speaking. So like there's a lot going on, and the currents are colliding here, producing a spiral that has, I've talked about this a lot. I'll just shortly mention, it's called Australian Ammonite. I did not want to play this. It's probably like 10, 12, somewhere down here. There it is, 24. Dancing on a Pillar, Surf's Up, dude. The Lateralis Effect. The Wheel of Time. These are all related to this this ammonite feature underneath of Australia that actually was like a nucleus here underneath the overall region of not just Australia but Papua New Guinea. And the particle began to physically, like, radioactively decay, like nova, and basically shifting the center of mass and moving over here. Maybe that's what it is it like goes along here and then it rides the wall. And I'm just thinking, like, is there a Hawaiian Island arc here? Like down this way? Like, could it have gone like that? Like down here and then across here? Basically as because there's a lot going on here. Like we see a bunch of figure eights, a bunch of them. Like here's an X, and they're all over the place. I went through this in detail to the point where it's like, whoa! Like here's one, here's a big one, a big lobe, and it actually, if we look here, it's gone because it got overwritten, but it actually went this way down here, over like this way up here. We can still see this segment through here, down through this segment, across, maybe not through there though, even then, up here, but this might have been overwritten, like it probably went this way. So like some of this coastline region was reshaped by, that might not even be supporting any continental shelf at that stage. Oh, we see right here, there's one of those bloops. Bloop. 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 Where a bond broke and it was able to freely move away by the string of bonds breaking. Maybe. Okay, so basically my thought is the most likely thing for where place for this particle to have been was here, and it moved through this process, but Australia was actually Australia was up here, so as it moved, like the particle maybe like spun out this way, like underneath it, and then it was left behind here, kind of like how shallograms. Let's look at some shallograms. Here's a shallogram that does not have a particle here at the chakra points, formed by currents. These are formed by currents, not fossils. But whereas here, like a particle, not just a particle, but a particle with a fault line, perhaps a lot like this one. I don't know. I never really, this didn't come to mind. It's even got like the kind of 120-degree bends looking thing going, teeth. But then no particle. So like here there's no particle. Instead there is an ammonite nucleus. Like where the ammonite is considered to live last is like this last chamber. It's kind of like a nucleus of it, which is really a pillar that Australia rests on, is this like ammonite shape's final chamber here. So really it turned that nucleus from a spherical system that was forming under Australia. At least like it may not have been forming there initially. It may have actually started like way over there, somewhere else, maybe Hudson Bay. I've been thinking of this region maybe having the particle being in this region at some point and like physically just moving, and then once it reached over here, maybe it had like a more explosive effect on the above terrain, because it was like meeting more resistance. Like the current from this direction was becoming more like resistant to the flow, as well as that there's a current coming here, because essentially they're all, one's coming from generally over in this direction, one's coming generally from here, and one's coming from, so basically the current northwest, northeast, and southeast of Australia are three currents that are generally moving into this region, producing all sorts of effects that are so cool. Magnetic fields going on, ammonites, all sorts of things, but also possibly leaving behind the Hawaiian Island particle in the process, as well as, I believe, the effects somehow being imprinted here where there's again the magnetic field. Like this is maybe the crust that it was on when it was happening. It was like an underlight, I don't know, like a current of magma yet to come out that was already being influenced this way somehow. I have no idea how this formed. It like while also, because it really seems to me like it's all caused by both Hawaii and Australia being like over top it. I mean, certainly it opens. So here's the current coming from underneath North America, coming this way, and then running into here. By the way, I was gonna just start like watching some more videos on this and speak a little bit more on the volcanic eruptions and like the nuances I'm thinking about. But I really thought maybe it'd be useful to kind of set up even why I'm watching specifically the Mauna Loa volcano in the first place. Like, besides that it's happening now, it's happening like while I've been thinking about this sphere aspect of the Hawaiian island island chain, and where like, so the current essentially was coming in underneath North America, running into resistances that then effectively they branch out, like the resistance open, it must have just opened up, kind of like like two opposing currents that have like a space between them, but in the in essence, opening up the Earth so that it physically opened and underlying, like, even more than it was, because this was all happening, like, as a current's flowing this way, it's bubbling into this region, and this opens this space. And this is really when, like, the rapid phase of the supernova of Earth, when it expanded, because it's a supernova, it's radioactive decay, it's an excited electron, it's all these things, and it was rapid, and it divided here. I'm like, is any of this true? Like, it sucks to be alone investigating this, because it's like versus the certainty of society, even though, like, I feel confident society is missing things, although there's the side of things where it's like, well, maybe it's all like a Truman Show thing, and it's so, like, this really isn't true, and it really comes back down to simple, way simpler things to remember than this. This is way too much information. TMI, the end, done. But then, like, is that, like, that would mean everything is too much information, and it's just like love. What do you mean? You just love, dude. Like, how do I cut this? Love, you cut it with love. It just makes no sense. Maybe though. Maybe that's it. That's all it takes. All you need is love. Okay. But so this stream looks like it kind of, in meeting resistance, was it upwelled in a way? And then when it crossed this and broke into different wavelengths, as it kind of, like, this side's resistance was essentially here the whole time, like sitting here, but this side was putting a current that was just ballooning over here between them, as it was more able to freely move, while this side just, like, provided a backstop so that the pressure, like a hose pushing against something, like, it's gonna lift it up. Something's gonna move, like, with enough, like, if you just put a hose down on the ground and spraying with enough pressure, like, it's gonna lift up. That's what I was getting at. It's like, something's gonna move. That, what am I saying? Okay, so let's real quickly take a break from what I was just talking about, and maybe check out, just for a second, I'll go to these again. This is really, so I think what's happening is it goes up, like, there's a general current underneath this that's flowing, or at least a pressure to the current, to the lava in this direction, or this one or the other direction. I think it's this to the right though, probably just because of its physical flow downhill, even, and not even like anything more complicated than that. And the pressure, essentially causes it to move in a direction, but then at points it breaks, like, it meets resistance, so it goes upward instead, is easier for it, perhaps. Like, it's hard to get through this tube region, but it's easy to go up through this opening, so it just bubbles in the meantime, because there's just all this heat, so the heat's just, like, being released. But then, like, there's a channel through, and then so essentially it goes up, down through the channel, up, down through the channel, up, down, and kind of vibrates like a wave, is what I was thinking. Like, alright, let's watch it a little bit. Possibly even in both directions, like two, probably. That would make sense for how there could be like two directions at one point. Like, it's literally just like some of the spray goes that way, some of the spray goes that way, and it's dependent on like the forces overall within the currents, in terms of like which way it tends to get projected. Like, if there's enough of a backstop, like here, there's just enough of a backstop against the current that was flowing out this way that it just ballooned in this region here, here, and then this current flowing out here physically extended out into it, because essentially as that current pushed across, it filled the region, but essentially it also caused the source of the overall current to have more space to fill in, so less like overall pressure against this current. So then like once it really started to balloon, it probably like broke the boundary to a degree here to produce like variations into it at that point, which also seemed to happen over here in some way. So maybe that's like it breaking into Australia, like initially or maybe it's just like a particle forming along the coast of Australia that went down the coast. I don't know if that would be the right location. I'm just kind of thinking in my head and speaking things out loud that are probably not true with that, what I just said, but only way to find what is true is to go through a lot of like potentials, or for us to, or just to not need to anymore because we got there, or just figure some other way out, like by just choose love. Choose love, man. I feel like that's just choose falsehood, because then like nothing matters but love, but like nothing matters but love, like not even the truth. Maybe truth is like the opposite, but then nothing matters but truth, not even love. Sad reality, Okay. So, I was generally thinking, like, as this open, though, like, initially it's coming out directly, and then it starts to spread because the earth fractured. Pretty much like a shallogram. Like, it started to actually physically separate it. That's fine one. That one had it. I guess I should have gone this way. Then it starts to separate it. And then it filled in the space with new magma, though. Because the Earth was still alive. Like, this was out of magma. This thing's particle supernovaed and just froze in this shape. Oh my god. I really would love to have those two shallograms. Right now they're like $100. La la la. At least like have them like scanned and put it would be so cool if there was like a really rigorous scanning three-dimensional shallogram catalog online. with high definition, zoom in, and all sorts of things. It's just we think they're fossils right now, so they're just not quite as exciting as if this is more like what's going on, something of this nature. Trying to think if there's anything of this particle. Just the way its presence causes. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Far more substantial, like. So I was watching I was watching the reaction to this video, and I think I was saying the current went this way, and then I really think this has to be going downhill, generally speaking here. Even though there's definitely a current coming across all the way from over here, it maybe goes up here, but I feel like this one would overwhelm it, so it would probably be going down this way. Although maybe this one reaches up and like causes a boundary, and then this just preferentially goes this way. I don't know. I don't know. It's certainly very slow motion here, whatever's happening. So maybe it's kind of like a slow like churn almost. So the streams are crossing. But this is like flowing. And I feel like this is just physically pushing this out here and causing it to flow around. So like if that happens, it's a really interesting concept, like an thing to be aware of. Like it really makes me think of off the bat. Because I was talking about the potential of how like these kind of form dendritic structures, and maybe like water also does it. And it occurred to me, like when I was watching this, like it occurred to me that there is a place I've seen like another kind of just surrounding thing that then has some complex network around it. I believe it's by this, around this like fox wolf face is this structure. It's just so pronounced. Upheaval dome. Like it almost makes me feel like like it is this, like there was a substantial flood in North America, especially. And maybe this was like a lava equivalent, but for water, where it's just like a geyser, but a massive geyser, so much of a geyser that it just like gushed current, not just like causing like a pulling, but just gushed a current to a point where it's physically bringing like material. So it was almost like not heat that was the like mixture with the material, but instead water just gushing and shaping the land. I'm just a hypothesis that pops in my head. not, I don't know. I'd like to see the elevation. Does this have it? I don't want to get caught up on this, but maybe that happened here. Like where the dendrite features are. Like it's so, this is abnormal. It's not just water. Like this took currents. Sharp currents that don't even really exist anymore. They're not even there. There's not any reason for this like spontaneous thing. And then even the current, we can see it filled the entirety up to the peak and then like continued on in a smaller channel just like the lava. I'd have to inspect this way more closely now that it occurred to me because I didn't know what to make of it. Like besides the where would it be? Periodic table of currents. Besides that, I happen to draw where basically the hydrogen. Basically, I had this hypothesis based on the Earth that a polygon has a inlet, and basically that is a hydrogen atom, and then with no neutrons because it's just like a place for current to flow. It's basically hydrogen, and then where there's a mound becomes a neutron, and then where there's eddies also, the eddies being protons which fill the space where the eddies were. And then essentially depending on what's going on, it can change by how much current is there and reshape it. So pretty much I was like, well, this looks a lot like this. Also, I talked about that in here, probably around here, but also like building into it. It's all building into like anything else is like building into the subsequent things. So like this is really where I started to be like, I think I can like do this in a period to the point where I made a periodic table of currents. Like this is pretty. So instead of drawing it like this, I started to just begin to draw it like this, where there's an inlet and an outlet. And then one neutron, two neutrons, and then inlet, outlet, which is essentially the number of protons, maybe. I'm not sure if that continues though. Like at some point it begins to be like based on the pretty much it's a polygon. So it's like back to here. It's kind of like this, but then it begins to form like mounds within it in which like the eddies can build around pretty much stably. So if it's not, maybe this is kind of like one. It's hard to say what exactly one would be like. Like this is maybe one, and maybe this is kind of like one. but maybe like the whole of it is essentially like a proton, and then the proton's missing weight is filled with an electron's current, which is pretty much a current that carries like within it materials inclusive of like boulders, which are probably what we really see as electrons, are like the bigger things in the current that reach a sufficient scale. This is interesting. I really am curious now if this... 'cause it's got this, like this salty looking, like a water, like water, substantial current flows right here. This is real interesting. Like, wouldn't water, if it's flowing like down a river, or like even if it's a wide one, wouldn't it still like deposit the material like generally at the center? Although this looks like it goes downward. It's hard to say what's happening. Like, this is a chamber. Let's go to Google Earth. As much as I don't really want to open it on this condition of my computer right now. This will help us get some 3D. Where was I? Here we go. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so polygonal boundary, polygonal boundary, like the whole of it. Chamber for current to flow. Okay, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yep, yep. Like, this to me is suggestive that as a current flowed through, it kind of like shoved, instead of it settling, the materials that would have settled instead got shoved to the side and physically pushed to a boundary of the current to a degree. Those ones, and then like the larger bulk current was really carving through this above region. Something of that nature, maybe, where like over here, even like where it settles out, like it doesn't continue really here. It meets resistance. Not only does it meet resistance, but it solidifies this because the current's just like flowing through it. So it looks like it flows here out of this and then branches over here and then forward through here and just starts to like dendritically branch out and just fill the space. Moses and Zeus. Whoa. This freaking wheel. They're really like shallogram teeth there. Which are just currents. Critically currents involved. That's cool though. That's cool though. Okay, okay. Some more shallogram-like features. but probably where the current was most intense, so like physically pushed the sides of this material over. Here it wrapped around, it looks like, and just kind of solidified this region. Oh my god. This is the most epic freaking place. What the I'm just looking for ammonite-like features around it. So this is probably reflective of how atoms, like, actually form in some way. Like, it's starting from scratch, pretty much an upwelling, that then bubbles through, flowing in a current. Almost has like an ankh-like shape too. Reminds me of this shallogram. It always, the surrender shallogram. This side not so much, but over here, like a lot of much over here. Not so much over here, although maybe if I zoomed out further it might be some interesting things, but it doesn't look like it. Looks like it flows out this way, and then once it reaches the Green River here, it just fanned out. Like, really fanned out there. Through the whole of it, though. Carving channels through it. This is like a negative of so many things, so many processes that we see without being able to see like this angle of it. This is like almost like an X-ray. Whoa, bunch of. Sorry, I'm definitely getting a little caught up on it. I'm not sure if like exactly what I just said is all like that exactly reasonable. Just wondering if maybe like these places it could have had water come out and go this way and then start to just fan out this way. Like something even more substantial type of places, I don't know. Where am I looking at? Oh, it's like turn. I'm like trying to look like from this angle, that's why I'm confused. like here, the current's coming down here, around here, but it just physically is going at this angle and wraps like that. It's just kind of reminiscent of up here, where there's a current going around here that wraps around the North Pole and then goes over this way. Around the pole and that way. So that's some kind of pole, maybe. Okay. I haven't even watched any of this. Well, it's just a little bit. I was really planning on watching. Maybe let's see what's up. Let's see what's up. It's 2 minutes. Like, pardon me. I know people are like, what the fuck. Quality's a little low. It's hard. I really would prefer high resolution if I want to watch it like that. That's better. Really seeing it in all. So I had this thought that like this looks like a shalogram chakra with like surrounding. Pardon me, sir. They just look kind of like chakras, which are pretty much places where the current could flow, so it upwells, relatively speaking, or downwells. But all things are relative, so it just upwells since we're looking at lava here. To a point where like certain ones are higher than others consistently. Mother freaking. We got. But I was thinking like this is probably not the best one. Let's go back. Let's just go back to that one, and then I'll. And it's. I don't think I said this. So there's like stretches where it's going off, and then stretches it's not, and then stretches it's going off. I don't know if this is exactly the image that I was looking for. Kind of like here. My thought is like there's basically a big wavelength that's like it's generally up here, and then has like it's generally down. Not this isn't the best either, but like there's somewhere in here they're just spaced apart in a way that really looks like a wave spacing, like wavelength. In short, they can have that type of characteristic where their spacing, where the upwelling is a wavelength, maybe not like a continuous wavelength, but it's basically a wavelength. So like essentially like here we have not just one but three, like there's a cluster, and then there's a cluster of generally not open, and then like it's not exact, but like a cluster here, maybe it's hard to say if like that's open or that's closed, and then more of a cluster here, but especially this one has like a central peak. And then like the big peaks are less often, but like at certain frequencies in a way where it's literally because it's a wavelength like characteristic where there's like a current flowing that then is flowing like a wave. So, wave particle duality, the end. Already talked about that also somewhere in here. Wave. Maybe this one. I don't know if that's number 6. It's so early on. It's probably been adjusted since then. These ones I'm not so sure about. Like, I think it gets complex, kind of like where it really takes a good like starting reference point of something more like tangible to branch out from, to really go from a basic polygon to something like something that more represents like a reality of things. I don't know if this is the best. I don't know if this truly can be used to do that, but it certainly can't be without looking. But I think the concept that like a basically a sufficiently energetic water current that perhaps had like material of the land that was being shaped, especially whatever this is, sandstone or something. I don't even know the rock types like that. I think it's sandstone. Sad reality. It's gotta be sandstone. Okay, so I guess this will be my number 100. Nope, no it won't. That's right, that's right. I did not make that last one. I was thinking of making this one 99 because it's so related to this and everything, but it really was just like a reaction video. So I guess that means this one is 99. So my next video hopefully will be something of excitement and as cool as like this one. This one would have been a pretty solid 100. I feel like there's some interesting topics. The orange, uh, the cup of the orange. The orange. No, I'm just kidding. There's some, you know, some cool stuff going on. Maybe. I don't know. Alright, see you soon. Peace. Pardon me. I just don't know what to do with myself. It's weird being me, although I know I'm not just me, and there's more to it than meets the eye even now for me, and it's me and this me. You know, I don't.